Hi there guys, welcome to the video. Thank you very much for tuning in for another video about building a perfect high-speed cinematic quadcopter, a 7-inch quadcopter at that. And this is, I think, part 4. Yeah, I think it's part 4. In the previous part it was a very long video in which we installed the 4-in-1 ESC. I gave you a lot of tips. I showed you how I solder up the 4-in-1 ESC. And in this video we're gonna add a flight controller. Also from Rush FPV, a Blade F722 digital. This video will be a lot shorter because, as you can hopefully see from these white things over here, it's all plug and play with this flight controller. Super duper easy, no soldering required. Here we go.
You serious?
Alrighty guys, before we get started I should tell you that this video is sponsored by Rush FPV. They provided me with this stack, this flight controller and the 4-in-1 ESC. They're not paying me for this video and they have no prior knowledge of what's gonna be in this video. So also the link in the description is not an affiliate link. So disclaimer, I did get the stack for free. Alrighty, so this here is again from Rush FPV, the Blade F722 digital. And they make in the 30.5 by 30.5 size, they make two flight controllers, a digital version and a non-digital version. And that digital version has a plug over here, especially for the DJI Air unit or Vista units. Those sets actually come with plugs, as you know, and those plugs actually fit in this connector over here. Very, very convenient, no guesswork. So you do in fact have to solder up that wire harness to your Vista set. In the case of the Air unit you don't have to solder anything, at least for this part of your build. And so that's very convenient, and you've got a plug especially for receivers. And yeah, you do need to solder up the wires to your receiver. Except for the RXSR receivers, for instance. Those have the plug of their own, right? And okay, so over here you've got a plug for an LED strip. Rush FPV actually has an LED strip. I don't have that. Maybe I should have a look at that, but well, it's LEDs, right? Okay, and over here you've got a wide connector which will run to your 4-in-1 ESC, right? To address the motors and power your flight controller and such. And the last plug over here is for GPS antenna. So, okay, and over here you've got a USB connector. Regrettably it's a micro USB connector, so not USB-C. I do know that their next generation of flight controllers will have USB-C, but again, now you're stuck with a micro USB connector over here. Yeah, so, and the flight controller is nice and shielded, right? A metal aluminium plate at the top. And then, well, no shielding at the bottom, but looking at the bottom you can now see that you've got a lot of solder pads. So in case you don't want to use those connectors or plugs, or you've got something that won't fit those plugs, you can revert to soldering up wires to the bottom of the flight controller. And you will have to solder up over here a bridge, choosing whether your receiver runs on 3.3 volts or 5 volts. The weird thing about this flight controller is it's for digital, right? For DJI digital or other digital setups. It doesn't have pads for a camera or a VTX. So this flight controller is very much not suitable for non-digital setups, for analog video setups. Bit weird, and I can't check, but the flight controller might not even have a chip, an OSD chip. Yeah, it's not needed of course for a DJI digital setup, and I will be using a DJI digital setup. Just so you know, if you pick the digital version of the Blade F722, you won't have solder pads for an analog camera, etc. Now let's actually have a look at what you get with this flight controller. Alrighty, first of all, these Blade flight controllers and ESCs all come in these plastic containers which actually interlock, and very handy. I appreciate that you can actually reuse those. I already have one of the sets of gummies in the flight controller, and these are the larger gummies. You also get a set of shorter or smaller gummies. You get some gummy washers. This plug over here is actually to protect your USB connector. You can can actually slip that into your USB connector and have it protected from dirt in flight, right? So very nice. And these are all wire looms for most all of these connectors you see on the flight controller. Now you might think, well, yeah, I don't like plugs on my flight controller. In the past we've had, in the distant past I should say, so most of the flight controllers actually had plugs. And we didn't like those because it's a point of failure, right? A solder connection is more secure. Yes, I would agree. However, these plugs that Rush FPV provides lock into the flight controller. I'm not sure you'll be able to see that, but they have a tab which locks into these connectors. Let's actually check if you can maybe hear that locking mechanism. I can hear it, maybe you could hear it, but now this wire definitely will not come out. Hopefully you can see that it's locked in place. That tab, that white tab goes over the plug or the connector on the flight controller. So yeah, still it's a connector and still people might not like it, but this does make installing your flight controller a whole lot easier. And regrettably it's not a completely solderless affair with these setups, but it does save you a lot of finer solder work. These pads are a lot smaller than on the 4-in-1 ESC, right? So yeah, it definitely does make life easier, especially if you're relatively new to soldering. I actually forgot to tell you that the flight controller and the 4-in-1 ESC come with a manual, an illustration of all the connectors and such. Definitely not unimportant and well done by Rush FPV. So here we are, here's our quadcopter with the 4-in-1 ESC in place. I already installed the Vista unit. I have done videos about installing Vista units and there are a lot of other videos about installing Vista units. So I won't go over that. I will simply show you how easy it is to install our flight controller into this quadcopter. So here is our flight controller, and the first thing I'll connect is a wire loom that will go to the 4-in-1 ESC. Definitely not unimportant. So I've installed the 4-in-1 ESC front to back, in case you didn't see that video. So this is actually the front, which is at the back of our quadcopter, and this is the back, which is at the front. So that's why I use the longer version of these cables. The flight controller and the 4-in-1 ESC came with two wire looms, a short one and a long one. This is the long one. So let's first of all make very sure that the plug is seated well, and then also slip it into our 4-in-1 ESC and also make very sure that it's seated well. Okay, and I'm gonna twist this wire a couple of times to prevent interference, and then I'm gonna set the flight controller in place. One thing of note, by the way, you might have noticed that neither this flight controller nor the 4-in-1 ESC from Rush FPV come with stack screws. Something to keep in mind. So you'll have to provide, well, in most cases the frame will come with stack screws, right? But, well, in case it doesn't, you will have to provide stack screws of your own. Okie dokie, so, okay, the Vista set. I have already soldered up the wire to that, the wire that came with the flight controller, and I'm gonna hook that up. Let's see how hard it is to install the Vista set. Click, and there we go. It's that easy. Okay, and we've got, this is a Crossfire receiver I have here, and I'm gonna install it over here with double-sided tape, and let's hook it up to our flight controller. Click, and that is it. Sure, if you want to add a GPS, you'll have to hook that up to over here. And what else? Well, if you want to add LEDs over here, a buzzer you will have to solder up to the bottom of the flight controller. There's no plug for that. But yeah, super duper easy. I'm done actually. Yeah, no extra soldering here. Very, very nice. And even in the default setting of this flight controller, the receiver is already set up to this UART. I'm not sure what UART it is, but it's already set up. Also, the data connection to your Vista setup or the air unit is already set up in Betaflight. No hassle. Even if you reflash the flight controller, the new version of the Betaflight firmware will also have these installed. Very, very easy. If you want to add a GPS, you will have to say what UART it's on, and LED, no, you won't. Yeah, you'll have to tell Betaflight that you actually have an LED, but okay, that's it. Super duper easy. And that's all there's to it. That's installation of this Rush Blade F722 digital. Now again, the Betaflight setup for this flight controller is super duper easy. I won't go into that. I won't make a separate video about that. However, getting the motor order correct, as I told you a minute ago, I have swapped the 4-in-1 ESC around, so I will have to change the motor order in Betaflight. I'll do a separate video on that because that's changed in the latest Betaflight version. So it's actually become a lot easier, but that warrants a separate video in my humble opinion. So that'll be the next video actually. After that, the quadcopter will be flight ready. Exciting! I can't wait to fly this quadcopter. So yeah, I'll shoot that video about the motor order right away, and then I'm gonna button things up and fly this quadcopter. For now, I want to thank you for watching. If you are left with questions, hit me up a comment down below. Catch you on the next video. Bye bye.